The inspection car reached Bayou Flats Depot at 2:23 in the morning. No warning, no posted schedule, no sergeant running ahead with a flashlight to make the camp look better than it was. Just two dim headlights sliding through a sheet of Gulf Coast rain, past the guard shack, past the motor pool, and toward the commissary yard. Major General Elias Kincaid was not supposed to stop there. His driver was already turning toward the headquarters building when the general lifted one hand. "Hold it!" The car rolled to a stop. For a few seconds, nobody inside moved. Then the driver saw what Kincaid had seen. 51 black soldiers sat at outdoor mess tables in the rain. Their field jackets were soaked through. Their bread had collapsed into wet pulp. Cold beans slid around in mess kits half filled with rainwater. 20 yards behind them, the commissary windows glowed warm and yellow. Inside, dry men moved under electric lights. Outside, the 51 ate without speaking. Kincaid stayed in the car for one more breath, not because he was uncertain, because he wanted to make sure he was seeing it correctly. Then he opened the door. No one called the camp to attention. No officer announced him. The nearest private looked up, froze, and then the recognition passed across the tables without a word. The helmet, the long raincoat, the posture of a man no one in that yard had expected to answer to. Kincaid stopped at the end of the first table. Water ran from the brim of his helmet. He looked at the soaked plates. Then he looked toward the warm commissary. His voice stayed low. "Who placed these men outside?" The rain answered first. Then a man stood from the far table. Not a captain, not a lieutenant trying to intercept trouble before it climbed. A mess sergeant. Tall, square-shouldered, with rain running off his sleeves. His name was Sergeant Isaiah Bell. He reached inside his field jacket and removed a small ledger wrapped in oilcloth. The cloth was dark with water. The corners of the book were soft from being handled too many times in bad weather. Bell held it out with both hands. Kincaid looked at the ledger, then at Bell. And the thing Bell had been carrying for 78 days turned a wet mess line into a formal inquiry before sunrise. Bell had been in the Army long enough to understand two things. Orders mattered. Records lasted longer. The ledger had begun as one line on August 18, 1944. Evening chow, rain at 18:15. Colored detachment served outside. White personnel inside commissary. Temperature 52 degrees. 51 plates issued. Bell had not planned to build a case. At first, he was only marking the problem so he could report it clearly. But the next meal was outside. Then the next one. Then the next one after that. So Bell kept writing. Not speeches, not complaints, not angry words that could be called attitude. Just the kind of facts the Army claimed to respect. Date, weather, temperature, meal period, number of men, officer on duty. By the second week, the ledger had a rhythm. By the fourth week, it had a pattern. By the eighth week, it had something more dangerous than a complaint. It had proof. Every night, the officer responsible was Captain Vernon Sykes, Quartermaster Corps. Sykes had arrived at Bayou Flats 2 months earlier with a clean uniform, a clean desk, and a talent for making discomfort sound administrative. When Bell's platoon sergeant raised the issue through channels, the written reply came back in one sentence. Interior mess space insufficient. Outdoor arrangement temporary, pending slot review. That sentence did a lot of work. It sounded reasonable. It sounded official. It sounded like an inconvenience nobody had chosen. But Bell had learned to measure the distance between official language and what men had to live through. So he started counting more than plates. During supply runs, he counted the men eating inside. During equipment checks, he counted empty benches through the window. When the kitchen door opened, he looked past the steam and counted space. 17 times he wrote down interior occupancy. Not once did the commissary reach even 2/3 full. The highest count Bell recorded was 58%. Most nights, it sat below half. There had been room. There had always been room. 3 men in Bell's detachment had already reported to sick call for cold exposure and fever. 1 private had lost feeling in 2 fingers after a midnight loading detail that followed an outdoor meal and wet clothes. Bell wrote that down too. The doctors' names, the dates, the duty slips, the times, everything. So when Kincaid opened the ledger under the rain at 2:31 in the morning, he did not find a story. He found a record. The general read the first page, then one from September, then one from October. Then he stopped on a page where Bell had written, "Commissary benches open on north side, 22 seats empty. Men remain outside." Kincaid closed the ledger. His face did not change, but the air around the table did. He turned to his aide. "Find Captain Sykes." Sykes arrived 9 minutes later, still buttoning his field jacket. He saw the general first, then the black soldiers, then the ledger under Kincaid's arm. That was the order in which the night became dangerous for him. Kincaid asked for an explanation. Sykes gave the one he had been using for 78 days. Temporary overflow, limited seating, pending review. Kincaid asked when the review had been filed. Sykes did not answer quickly enough. That was the answer. There was no review, no request, no inspection ticket, no revised seating plan, no attempt to correct the thing he kept calling temporary. The temporary arrangement had survived because nobody with a dry chair had been forced to feel it. Then Kincaid asked the question that broke the excuse. "How full is that commissary tonight?" Sykes said it was at capacity. Bell did not move. He did not interrupt. He only looked at the ledger. Kincaid saw the look. He opened the book again. Page after page, Bell's quiet handwriting showed the same contradiction. Inside capacity, counted. Outside men, counted. Empty benches, counted. Weather, counted. Sickness, counted. Silence, counted. The general read for nearly half a minute while the rain beat against every helmet in the yard. Then he said, "Wake Colonel Merrow." Colonel Daniel Merrow commanded Bayou Flats Depot. He came fast. Too fast to pretend he had not guessed something was wrong. When he reached the commissary yard and saw Kincaid standing beside Bell, his face tightened into the careful expression of a man already sorting blame. Kincaid handed him the ledger. No explanation. Merrow read the first page, then the second. Then he stopped. Because the ledger was not the first warning he had received. 6 weeks earlier, Lieutenant Robert Hensley, the white company officer assigned to Bell's detachment, had filed a written complaint. He had sent it through proper channels. It had been stamped "Received" at depot headquarters. And then it had disappeared into a stack of paper where uncomfortable things went to become old. Kincaid asked Merrow if he had seen it. Merrow said yes. The word sat there in the rain. At that point, the problem was no longer Captain Sykes. It was no longer a shortage of tables. It was not even the storm. It was a chain of officers who had all found a way to let black soldiers eat in the weather while calling the matter unresolved. There is a difference between a bad order and a quiet order. A bad order has ink. A quiet order has fingerprints. And by 2:52 in the morning, Bell's ledger had enough fingerprints to name the room. Kincaid gave the first order immediately. The outdoor mess arrangement was suspended. Bell's detachment would eat inside, beginning with breakfast. If the commissary had to rotate schedules, it would rotate schedules. If another unit had to wait, it would wait. If an officer wanted to argue about chairs, he could argue while standing in the rain himself. No one at the tables cheered. They were too cold for that. But a few men stopped pretending to eat. One of them lowered his spoon. Another closed his mess kit and looked toward the glowing windows like he had been looking at them for almost 3 months, and only now had permission to believe they were real. Kincaid turned back to Bell. He did not thank him. Not yet. He asked why Bell had not forced the issue higher. The question was not gentle. It landed in front of every man who had watched the army teach black soldiers the cost of being too loud, too early, too right. Bell kept his eyes on the general. "Sir, I have seen complaints get lost." Then he touched the ledger. Counts are harder to lose. For the first time that night, Kincaid looked away. Not from anger, from recognition. He had spent a career around officers who could explain anything if the paperwork was vague enough. Bell had built something vague men could not walk around. Kincaid kept the ledger. He ordered his aide to log it as collected evidence and attach it to a formal command inquiry at first light. Bell watched the book leave under the general's arm. For 78 days he had carried it in his jacket, through rain, through cold, through meal lines where speaking too sharply could become insubordination before it became justice. Now the book was gone. But so was the excuse that the men outside had only misunderstood. The inquiry opened at 0600. By 0730, Captain Sykes had been questioned. By 0915, the logistics officer, who countersigned the original outdoor arrangement, had been questioned. By noon, both were relieved pending review. Colonel Merrow was not removed from command. That would have made the story cleaner than the Army usually allowed. But he received a formal reprimand. A black mark with enough weight to travel with his name longer than the rain had traveled with Bell's men. What the inquiry found was uglier than a single cruel order. There had been no written instruction saying black soldiers must eat outside, no grand policy memo, no shouted declaration. The arrangement had begun as a roster error when Bell's detachment arrived 3 hours earlier than the kitchen expected. Sykes improvised outdoor tables for one meal. Then he chose not to correct it. Then headquarters chose not to press him. Then everyone above him chose the comfort of not knowing too much. That was the part that made the ledger matter. It proved how ordinary the harm had become, not because every man in the chain had planned it, because every man in the chain had accepted it. 78 days is a long time for a mistake to stay a mistake. At some point, neglect becomes the order. The ledger entered the official record. Every rain mark, every temperature, every empty bench, every man's meal counted under weather he should not have been forced to swallow. Bell never got the book back. What he received instead was something he had requested 3 times and never been granted: transfer approval for his detachment out of Bayou Flats. The papers were signed within 72 hours, not because the system had become fair, because the system had been seen. On their last morning at the depot, Bell's men ate breakfast inside. There was nothing dramatic about it: hot coffee, dry bread, a table that did not collect rainwater, a roof overhead. The kind of ordinary treatment that should never have required a general, a storm, and 78 pages of evidence. Bell sat at the end of the table and ate quietly. Across the room, empty benches still waited along the north wall. They had been there the whole time. That was the truth the ledger made impossible to bury. Bell had not shouted the order down. He had made the silence measurable.